right, so we're back with a special guest. As promised, I have my good friend here, the
Yeah,
Reverend Thomas Adams. Give
yeah,
him a hand, yeah, yeah. All right,
yeah.
welcome to the vessel, Thomas.
And listen, glad to be here. I'm glad that you invited me. You know, when you told me I was going to be on anything for you, and then just being able to be part of this broadcast, man, I'm excited about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're excited to have you here, and we're gonna, we talking about hope today. So,
Yeah, yeah.
before I dive into it, I just want to give a little background on how we even were introduced to each other. So,
Absolutely.
Thomas and I know each other from way back in the gap when I joined Missionary Union. So when he was here in the area, he was already there as our youth pastor, and so I got involved with the youth, and that's where our friendship kind of grew in ministry. So so very thankful for that. And as you can see, it has extended. So
Thanks.
so yeah,
Thanks.
for sure. All right, so let's get to it. I don't want to prolong this, so I want to get to it because this is such a great topic. Back in season one of this podcast, when I first started, I did an opening series called While We Wait. And it was basically looking at the fundamentals of our faith and taking it like a word at a time. So I had love, peace, and then hope was one of those words that I kind of did a deep dive into. And so I wanted to circle back around to that because I think it's important that we understand the role of hope in our faith.
Right.
So I want to open with this, Thomas. Is there anything or any, I guess, within the Bible, biblically, that jumps out at you regarding hope? Are there any stories that you're familiar with that discuss hope?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bible is outlined and it's all types of stories throughout about hope. You can look at the children of Israel and, the hope that they had to come out of bondage and out of
Yeah.
slavery. But I think the one that I really like and the one I've even preached on and spoke on even a couple times just because I love this passage. And I heard my good friend Darius Daniels, who's a minister, pastor of a church in the Northeast. Uh, he talked about this text, and it's in John 5, and it talks about the man at the pool of Bethesda and how he had been afflicted with a certain disease for 38 years, and how, the stirring of the water would come, but there was a hope that he could get down there, but it was never an ability. And so, he had that hope of one day being able to overcome that infirmity. But it did not come into play until he ran into, or Jesus coincidentally ran into him and asked him that question, do you want to be made well? And from then, told him, rise, take up your mat and walk. And I think that illustrates what we're talking about is that you can be in a position or in a place for a time to where you see so many people be blessed or so many things happen that you may feel, and I know we'll talk about this later, hopelessness. But there's a continued hope that the promises of God will manifest themselves in our lives. And it doesn't always, we always talk about it from the standpoint of, money and material things. But in
Yeah.
this man's case, it had nothing to do with those things. It had everything to do with being made well and being made better and having a more prosperous or more quality form of life. So I like that text as you talk about hope because it would have been easy to feel hopeless. And I think that was a situation
Mm-hmm.
where you felt hopeless in a point. Uh, but look at God. God comes
Right.
across His path and saves the day. So I love that topic.
Absolutely. And I think you're right in that the Bible is enriched with these stories of hope. And so I think about I mean even Job and
Yeah,
hoping,
yeah,
trying to figure it out, like how did all this happen to him, and hoping for better days, but never really, losing that ultimate faith in who God was. I think about some of the parables in the story, the woman with the issue of blood, and the
yeah,
paralyzed man, hoping for healing, and all of these things. And so I think it's important for us to understand the root of what hope really is in our faith. And so I want to move forward with even defining hope. And if I had to, some of the words as I was kind of preparing for this, and I've talked about in the past, hope is confident expectation, right?
Yeah, I
It's
like that.
yeah, it's like you desire for something to happen or something good to happen, in the future. And
Right.
so it's like when desire meets expectation.
Exactly.
So how would you describe it?
I think, and I looked it up coincidentally, and that's exactly what it says.
Yeah,
It's where expectation is basically expectation and a desire for um, a positive outcome. And so, yeah, I think that that's exactly what it is. Is we put our hope in something because we don't necessarily know uh, how it's going to turn out. It's faith. It's the belief in something that we can't see. And so when we're hoping for something, it's sometimes it's based on things that have happened in the past.
yeah,
Sometimes it's based on because the expectation. What we have to understand is the expectation is based on something, right? It's not just usually it's not just a blanket expectation. So if I'm hopeful that I'll lose weight, it's usually because I've seen somebody else do it, or
yeah.
I've seen, so it's based on something, even if it hadn't manifested itself in my life. But the way I look at it, yeah, it's a desire and an expectation for something to happen, but the expectation is usually based on something we've seen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for new believers, when I started to think about this, and I'm always conscious of, the words I choose, because, people can listen to this and maybe new to the faith, or just curious about it. And so when we hope for things, I think that our faith, or faith in God, really is the root of that.
Hmm.
And so I want to move forward. You mentioned the word hopelessness, and really, if I'm honest, how this the reason I wanted to circle back around to talking about this is, I met with someone recently, a young person, and he described how he was feeling at that moment as hopeless, and
Yeah.
it crushed me, because this young person, teenager and full life ahead, and at that moment felt hopeless. That's the word he used, and I'm like, man, that's heart shattering. And so, what would you describe hopelessness as? And then, what do you think a hopeless world would even look like?
Whew, that's a great question. I think that obviously when you talk about hope, and then use the word hopelessness or
Yeah,
hopeless, you just look at it as the opposite. So what I was looking at as as we were talking and as I was looking and researching the word, you look at it as the lack of desire
yeah,
and the lack of expectation in anything. So again, when I said it earlier, our expectations, as it relates to hope, is usually based in something, right?
yeah,
And so the lack of expectation is usually comes from those expectations not being met time and time again. So when we
yeah.
talk about being hopeless, it usually comes from I had hope at a point, and
Hmm.
then I had an expectation of something to change, but then as I got to a point where I thought it was going to change, something happened that turned me around, or something happened that did not work in my favor. And so maybe over the course of events, that hope has turned now into hopelessness. I've been let down by friends or family members. I've been disappointed by relationships. I've not had enough money, and
Yeah,
looked for people to help me, and it didn't happen. And so uh, I was hopeful at one point because I really believe that all of us have an innate hope that things are going to get better.
yeah,
But then the expectation, when it's not met, and expectation is a dangerous thing because usually when we expect something,
yeah.
and the lack of that thing arriving, it damages that. So it makes it hopeless it makes you feel hopeless, even though it may not be. It makes you feel hopeless. So what does a hopeless world look like? It looks like mismanaged expectation. It looks
Mm,
like us having a desire and a hope or an expectation for something to happen, and it continually over the course of time not turning out the way we thought it would turn out. But this is how, and this is why I love God, is because even though it does not look like what it's supposed to look like,
yeah,
God will come through. And even though we may be hopeless in a situation, in a circumstance, I do believe that God makes it look like what He wants it to look like.
Yeah.
The man wanted to be carried down, the man wanted to walk down, but God showed up and said, "Listen, I can make this happen right here." It doesn't, when He asked the question, "Do you want to be made whole?" The man's first response was, "I have no one to carry me down," because the expectation is, I need to get into this water. But Jesus is basically saying in this text, I just need to know that you want this in any way I can deliver it to you.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of times our expectations let us down as far as hope is concerned. So, what I would say to the young man who says that I'm hopeless, I would say that we always have to look at things. We may have to manage expectations and look at things in a different way. What is it that you're desiring? And could it be possible? Could it be possible that God's trying to do that thing in a way that you did not expect? And so
Yeah.
now you have to just manage the expectation of, okay, let me look around. Maybe God is trying to reveal something to me, right? In a way that I didn't expect it to look like. He may be trying to deliver it in a way that I thought it was going to come through the front door, but no, it's coming through the side door. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I really believe that, yeah, it's easy to lose hope when when things aren't going your way over a consistent period of time. But we have to remain hopeful
Yeah.
because I know God's going to work that thing out for you.
Man, that's good. That's good because the young person I was talking to, it was just what you just explained. It was not meeting the expectation. And
Yeah.
so he was bogged down with these expectations from external factors. So at home and other people of what he should be doing or where he should be at this point in his life. And so it was like he physically couldn't do it or couldn't meet that expectation. And he said, I feel hopeless. Like I can't do it. And what I really want to do, I can't accomplish. And so we talked through that, and he gave me some other examples. But I think you're right. There are more people now feeling that hopelessness because of where we are in the world, the things that are happening that are completely out of our control. And I think this is the first time in a very long time, and really the first time for a lot of us that we've experienced that, is that we've had to just stop what our routines have been. We talk about this new normal and all of this kind of stuff. It was kind of a full shock of our routines, and that has created this. And so many people I've talked to, friends and family and things like that, who are just kind of down right now and losing hope because it seems like day after day we're experiencing something major. I mean, even right now with the weather crazy like it is and all over the states, and it just kind of halts you. But at the end of it all, at the root of it all, come
Yeah.
on, is the hope,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so our hope in God is what we can grab a hold to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, I like that. I think the but is important because the
yeah.
but is what wakes you up every morning.
Yeah.
And but is what gets you started. Because what we understand is that regardless of what it looks like,
Yeah.
there's something else, and we have, and to be honest, we have the power to change that. And so I think that that's also where our hope lies, is that God gives us the strength each and every day. If He wakes us up, He gives us the strength each and every day to make some decisions that are going to help change our long-term circumstances. So I like the but.
Absolutely. And some of the scriptures that I kind of pulled, we see Paul in Romans, his
Yeah.
letters to the Romans. So Romans 5:5 is one of my favorites. Now, hope does not disappoint because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the
Mm.
Holy Spirit, which was
Right.
given to us. So, again, reminding us that we can find hope in our love for God. Also in Romans 12:12, rejoicing in hope. So, there's something to be celebrated in hope, right? So rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing steadfastly in prayer. So continuing that connection with God through these moments of hopelessness, I think also helps us come out on the other side, and we can find that hope in any situation that we may encounter. Now, as I transition forward, I was reading an article, and Pastor Derwin Gray of Transformation Church. I don't know him personally, I don't really follow him, but I ran across this, and he said about hope dealers. So that is the title is not to be confused with dope dealers. Okay, hope dealer. Okay,
And,
yeah,
and,
amen. Come on. So a hope dealer is a blood bought, eternally loved, spirit empowered child of God through Christ who
I like
hopes
that.
in God and helps others hope in God so his kingdom will be revealed on earth.
Yeah.
So that's a lot. It's very descriptive though, and I love it. So when hearing that, what types of thoughts or emotions are stirred up in you by his definition?
I, when I read this, I like the play on words.
Yeah.
I like the play on words. I think it's catchy, and I think it's appropriate for this time. And so the emotions, um, the first thing that you have to look at is blood bought.
Yeah.
So when you look at that terminology, uh, as it relates to hope, what you have, what I understand from that is that this is the hope comes with the price,
Yeah.
right? Our hope comes with the price, and that God sent His only Son to die for us to be executed,
Yeah.
for us to have this hope that springs eternal, and the hope is that there's something greater after this. I think that's
Yes.
what we have to understand, and that's where our that's the basis of our hope, is that there is something on the other shore, and there's something on the other side. But I like the part that of this definition that says spirit empowered,
Mm-hmm.
which means that it's not of my own strength that I have hope. My hope is in something that's inside of me that gives me hope in that. So how about the fact that the spirit that resides in me
Yeah.
gives me the strength to have hope in the thing that it wants me to hope for. So I mean, it's purchased with a price that gives me the power to be hopeful in the thing that is sustaining me. But the other part of this too is that it allows me not just to have hope, but to also be a strengthening vessel for hope for others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the part that many of us miss out on, because um, we miss out on, I think, a lot, Leanne, the testimony piece,
Yeah.
and how huge testimony is in the growth and hope for others. I think that many times, because of circumstances that may be our fault and may not be our fault, we've come across or we've done things in our life that we're maybe not proud of. But out of that comes a testimony, and a lot of times we're afraid to share
Mm-hmm.
the things that we've been through. But here's what comes from those things: is the hope for somebody else, that if Leanne went through what she went through,
Yeah.
right, but she still has this praise and she still has this genuine hope that things are going to be better, even in the midst of her circumstance or even coming out of this circumstance. I can go through this thing too. And there are a lot of people who are suffering, like the student you said, in silence. And they don't have a person like you to come to, or a person like me to come to and share certain things in confidence, knowing that we can be the people who can share with them, hey, things are going to be better. So I would encourage people to look inside yourself and look inside the faults that God has forgiven you for.
Yeah.
Use that strength, right,
Yeah.
to be a hope dealer and
Yeah.
say, look, I am, this is who I used to be, but look at who I am now. And here's how I got there.
Yeah.
And not be ashamed, because we all are human and we all are with sin and falling short of the glory of God. Not be ashamed of that thing, but use it as a pedestal
Yeah.
to see and to show other people what God can do. And so I think that's the piece, to be honest, that we're missing in the church these days.
Absolutely. I think you're exactly right. Through the testimonies, through our stories, and so when I first heard this term hope dealer, I was
Yeah.
listening to a podcast, Mary and Martha podcast. Keisha and Christina are the hosts, and they coined this term. I don't know if it's an original term of somewhere they got it from, but it struck me because of that. It's our stories. How are we using our experiences to spread hope and to other people, other believers, other non-believers? How can my life experiences be examples or really be motivation, encouragement, inspiration to
Amen.
others to continue.
Yeah.
Because when you reach that level of hopelessness, you don't want to continue, right?
Nope.
You don't want to keep trying. You don't want to continue on. And that's where we lose people. And so I think it's important that we do share our testimonies and our stories, because I tell friends all the time. I'm kind of the listener when things are happening in their worlds. I tell them your testimony is going to change someone else's life.
Yeah, that's
You
good.
know, you got to get on the other side of it, continue. And sometimes it's unfortunate that those things happen to us and we have to get through it, but that's the key: get through it. You don't have to stay there, right? You
Yeah.
get through it. You get through it from, help from God. This definition talked about our spirit. You mentioned that our spirit that lives within us, the Holy Spirit, it's a gift from God. It's something that God willingly gave us when we said yes to Him. And
Yeah.
so I think it's important that we label ourselves, we identify as hope dealers, because that's also a way that we bring others to the fold, to the kingdom, to share the love of God that we have in our hearts. So I think that's a really good point to make in terms of our testimonies.
Yeah.
Um, so as I transition to our next question, this is, I think, the most important question of
All
the
right.
night.
Okay.
Can we have a definitive sense of hope in life without belief in God?
Okay. So yes, right. Yes, you can, but you can't have a definitive belief in eternal life without
Okay.
belief in God,
Okay.
right?
Talk about eternal life.
Right. So what we understand and what we believe is that there is a uh, life after this. There's an existence that
Hmm.
happens after this, and that's what Jesus died for. I think that, and as I was looking at that, can you have a definitive sense of of hope? Yeah, we can hope in anything, right? We can have hope without. I mean, there are probably people who are non-believers who, because it's a definition in the dictionary of hope, it has a actual real terminology outside of biblical thought.
Right.
But can I have a hope in the eternal? No, I can't have a hope in the eternal without an established belief in God, because God, what God tells us is that the only way to come through to Him is through Jesus Christ. And so I have to have a belief in the one who can speak on my behalf to the Father, the one who can forgive me of all my sins, the one who can give me mercy and grace, and the one who can give me love unconditionally, and the one who can give me peace. I have to have the hope in that.
Yeah.
And that's where um, we as believers are secure. Now, can I have a hope in things getting better just in general? Yeah. I can have a hope that my life will turn around, and I can have a hope that, I'll be financially sound one day if I make better decisions in their relationships and life and families, and all those things will get better. Yeah. And I think that everybody has that general sense of hope. But there's a different type of hope, right?
Hmm.
That we as believers have, which is that all the things that I've done in the past are as far as the east is from the west, and that He'll give us a peace that passes all understanding, and that
Yeah.
He'll give us a sound mind and a sound heart, and that the other part of it is that the Bible, Paul tells us, to live is Christ and to die is gain. And so that's a hope in itself. The
Yeah.
hope is that regardless of what happens on this side, I'm gaining something on the other side if I continue. That he likens it to running a race and finishing a race and finishing a journey, and to hear His servant well done. So what I believe Christians believe or should believe as a basis is that our hope is in nothing less than Jesus Christ and His
Yeah.
righteousness. Right? And so I believe that, the simple fact of the matter is that we believe in God, right?
Yeah.
And that in that belief comes something better after what we're going through presently. And here's the other part of it is that what we're here's the other part that of hope is that sometimes things aren't bad for us, right? And so the idea of hope too is that we even have hope in those times, that even in the not so bad times or even in the good times,
Yeah.
things can still be better. And that I'm not married to this life, but
Yeah.
I'm living this life for my eternal reward. And so, yes, to answer your question, can I have hope? Yes. Can I have a definitive hope for something greater later, or something after this, after death, that death is not it? Without a belief in Christ, no, I can't. I don't believe you can have that. And so, what I would encourage each of your listeners to do is to connect with a local church or connect with a local ministry that can help them build on that hope, because you need that hope. That's the hope that gets you through uh, day to day. That's the hope that's going to get you through these kind of times. Because
Yeah.
what you made a good point earlier. COVID and some of these things have taken us out of our normal routine. But I'm gonna tell you what else it's done. It's forced us into a type of isolation that many of us have not been before, right?
Absolutely.
And so it's a situation where a lot of us are social people. Like I like being in the house, but I still like being out. I like being around people at church,
Yeah.
being social. And it's forced us into an isolation where you have time to think and ponder and overanalyze
Yeah.
and look at the things on Facebook and Twitter, and you feel like the world is caving in. And if you don't have an outlet or a hope that things are better than what you're reading or seeing in the isolation of your own home, in that even if things are going that way,
Yeah.
that I'm still reaping a reward at the end, then it is going to be tough. It can build about a sense of hopelessness. Now, it's not what you want for people. You want people to feel like something greater is going to come.
Absolutely. Man, that was good. That was good. I think that I think in the sense of eternal hope, this moment that we're living right now is a grain of salt compared to what we have eternally. And for me, when I remember when I first really started digging into my faith and really building a relationship, eternity was a hard concept for me.
Mm,
If I'm transparent, it was very hard for me.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I hear what eternity is, and I hear that you're saying this is only a moment. My mom describes it as like this is only about time. You're gonna be fine after this, and all of that. But it was hard because I think it was too big for my brain to really conceptualize because it
right,
wasn't logical to me.
right,
And but the more and more I started to read and meditate on the word of God and really talk to God, he made it very clear to me that this is temporary, that there is hope for my eternal future, and
right,
you
right,
should rest there and don't worry about the rest because this is a moment of time. And God and time, that that's a whole nother, that could be a whole nother episode there. But so I have found peace really in knowing that this will not last forever, whatever this is. So whatever moment that I'm experiencing that requires me to, not requires, but has me down or feeling down or hopeless and things like that. I know that it's not forever. But for many of us in that moment, it's hard to get out of that. It's hard, again, especially depending on what it is that you're experiencing, because I'm
yeah,
very careful with the things that I say too, because my experience may not be as hard or tough or that somebody else's experience, but it is my experience.
right.
So I try to help people through that too and say that there is light on the other end of that rough time. So and
And
that's where I
I
rely.
think you make a good point. And I think the other part too is don't diminish your moment,
Yeah.
right? Don't diminish your time. Like even though it is a small amount of time, right, in the grand scheme and in the pantheon of eternity, yes, we are here for but a speck of sand in the hourglass.
Yeah.
But that is our speck, and we have an opportunity to leave a mark. We have an opportunity to um, transform generations, and it may not be in the way that some of your notable key figures in life have done it. But if you can change the heart and mind, or if you can impact the heart and mind of one person, like the young man that you spoke to,
Yeah.
then with that, you don't know the far-reaching impact of that. And I don't think we ever do. And I spoke to a class the other day. We were reading for Valentine's Day, and this book that one of my coworkers got me to read was called Be Kind. And the simple premise of it was, if I'm kind to one person, what's the chance of this kindness going all the way around the world and people doing random acts of kindness and they
Yeah.
coming back to me in a way that somebody does something kind for me. And all I'm saying is that as we're talking about hope and as we're talking about what our impact is in that moment, sometimes we have enough hope that we can give it out to others and we can
Yeah.
get it overflows. But let's not diminish the fact that we have opportunity and we have that impact.
Yeah.
Even if we're only here for, Jesus did so much work in 3 years of ministry. You don't
Yeah.
know what your days and what your hours could be and the impact we may have on everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we're winding down, and I
Yeah,
have one other question for you. Well, probably two, but are you hopeful for the future?
absolutely. Some days more than others. I mean,
Yeah.
if we, like you said, if you're just being transparent, some days are difficult, right? So some days more than others, but I'm hopeful that the future is better than what we're going through right now, what I'm going through at this moment. And I'll be honest, I think that uh, one thing that keeps me grounded many days, and I can't say that I utilize this tactic all the time, but it roots me many days, is to just think back. I know the elders used to say it this way: think back over your life and look where God's brought you from.
Come
Like,
on.
it's easy to get down in a moment, right? It's easy
Yeah.
to feel like everything is going against you in those singular moments. But when you look where you started, right? And
Yeah.
if you look where you were 10, 15, 20 years from now, I mean, years ago, where you are now pales in comparison for a lot of us.
Yeah.
And I liken it, and I've seen this before written. We are living in a time that we once prayed for.
Come on.
And the idea is that a lot of things that we're doing right now are manifestations of God's promises 10, 15, 20 years ago. Like, it's
Yeah.
things he showed us in but a dream or through the words of some
Yeah.
type of prophet or a minister or even just words of a friend. Like, man, you know what, Leanne, you can do that podcast. And now look at this. I mean, you 3 seasons in. So
Yeah.
you and when we get to a point where we feel hopeless about things that we can't change for the
Yeah.
future, things of that nature. But look at the moment that we're in and how God has brought us from a point where we felt hopeless 5 years ago that something wasn't going to change. And he worked that thing completely out to the point where you don't even think about that anymore. Like, you don't even count it as a blessing because you done forgot that he worked it all the way out. Like, so yeah, I'm hopeful for the future because in the past I was hopeful for this, right? And it's and it made its way, and so I'm sitting in a moment that I prayed for many years ago in my job and in different places of life. So yeah, man, I'm hopeful that the future will even look brighter than what I'm going through
Yeah.
right now, for sure.
Yeah. Thomas, you're a certified hope dealer after that. You certified because I feel inspired by that because you just made me realize you're exactly right. I'm in a moment right now that I prayed for 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I want to feel secure in my career. I want to feel financially stable. I want, to have my own ride, that I paid for.
yeah.
This is wild to me because you're right. You can get caught up in the tough times that I can't change, things that I cannot change, and it weighs, it becomes a burden. But then I look around, I'm like, man, this is a moment that I didn't think would come, or I hoped that would come a decade ago, and here I am living it. And so that thank you, because that just inspired me, that just motivated me, and it really did impart in me hope for the future.
Yeah. I mean, it's what we're going through, man, and it's
Yeah.
it's it's difficult. But I tell you, the other piece and the last piece I'll say about that is
Yeah.
that it's important to surround ourselves by the people who can um, give us that kind of hope, because you're
Yeah.
not going to always have it, right? And you're
True.
not going to always feel motivated. But I one thing I know about you, and the people that you surround yourself by people who can give that type of encouragement. And I think
Absolutely.
that's the important thing for all people listening, is to have somebody around that can encourage you and to give you hope, because you won't always have that strength to be hopeful for something that's going to be better. But in those moments, you got to have somebody around you that you can call and somebody that you can believe in,
Yeah.
and that's going to give you the hard, honest truth and tell you
Absolutely.
like it is. So yeah, I think I think the future is going to be very hopeful for sure.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, that's all of my questions, but I do have a fun, kind of lighthearted one to end with, and we'll be
All right.
done. So I typically ask my guests about songs, and you share worship songs with me all the time. So
Okay.
what's in your playlist right now that you I don't repeat, or maybe something that you really feeling right
Man,
now?
geez, you know what? I texted you the other day, or maybe
Uh-huh.
it was a couple weeks ago, and I actually listened to this song, no lie, a couple days ago, the entire day. Like what I realized, I've got an addictive personality. So when I start a song, and if I really, really like it and feeling it, like I'll listen to it for a whole day and won't think twice about it. So
Yeah.
Worthy by Isaac Curry.
Okay.
Um, man, that's at the top. Um, Anthony Brown has Trusting You. I've
Mm-hmm.
been listening to that heavy in rotation.
Yeah.
Um, and Lord, You Are Good. I can't call Todd. I can't call
Is it
Todd.
Todd Delaney?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes. So I've been listening to a lot of that. Just you know, for me, I do some contemporary, but I just like to keep it real, real, just uplifting. I like real soulful type of music. Now, I'll tell you what else I listen to heavy is Mississippi Mass Choir. Anything that they sing,
Yeah.
you know, near the cross is, you know,
Oh, you
I'll
old
turn that on
school.
in a second if I'm, and then the last thing is probably if I'm having a hard time. I remember this song from college, man. Like it brought me to tears one day. Fred Hammond, "You Are the Living Word." Like it just
Mm-hmm.
when just thinking about how God made a way through some things I was going through in college. I just remember that song brought me to tears one day just on campus 20 years ago. But yeah, I love Fred Hammond. So yeah, that's something else I got on it.
Awesome. 20 years ago in college. Wow.
I know, right?
Wow.
99 to '03. I'm coming up on my 20-year class reunion in 2 years. Let's see, what's this, 2021? Yeah, 2 years from now.
Wow.
I know, right? I'm old. Ridiculous.
Woo. Well,
Ridiculous.
anywho, thank you for sharing that. I do appreciate that. And I appreciate you being on here today. I think we've had a great conversation, great dialogue about hope, and I hope that somebody that's listening to me, I hope that somebody who listens to this episode is encouraged to keep moving, keep going, and know that there's some light on the other end of it. So,
Absolutely.
so
It's been
anyway,
fun.
so
It's been
with
fun.
with all of that, and I appreciate you again. That's it.
All
Peace.
right. Have a good night.
All right, you too. Bye.